All right, so next on the agenda is an update of NJTPA Freight Division activities. Jacob, can you please update us on some key freight activities that NJTPA has been undertaking?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Chair. Just a quick overview of a couple initiatives that we have underway right now. The first is the 2050 Freight Industry Level Forecast Update. And as the update indicates, this is not the first time we've done this. We do this roughly every 5 years or so, and mainly to support our long-range transportation plan, but also in support of any other activities that may require this kind of freight information. So the study got underway around Christmas of last year, and to date, we've completed several tasks. As you see on the slide, we've completed the methodological framework, which is basically a kind of a game plan for the study, kind of beginning to end, kind of a step-by-step process that we worked on with the technical advisory committee for the study. And thank you to a couple of the members of the TAC that are here today. The second task, the data acquisition. The data was identified through that methodological framework task. The data has now been acquired, and work is underway. We've disaggregated the freight analysis framework, which is a free federal highway, US DOT product that provides commodity flows. And the issue with the data is the geographic level of detail is not sufficient for us to do a study for our region, which is why we had to disaggregate the information. Task 4, the e-commerce analysis. This is something that we started in the previous study. Not started, we actually completed this analysis in the previous study, but some new data has become available since then. So we're enhancing that analysis, and really it's going to show what we've all seen in person, which is all those delivery trucks that have really grown exponentially in recent years, especially throughout the COVID pandemic. Task 5, our freight forecasting tool update. So when we first did this study, I want to say probably like 10 or so, we developed kind of a massive Excel file with tons of macros that helped us develop our own freight forecast. It has since evolved into a more user-friendly interface, and we're using R as the back coding for it. And basically, what this tool does, really briefly, is it takes the commodity flows, in this case, the disaggregated freight analysis framework commodity flows, and it grows them. It develops forecast using Moody's industry employment forecast. So we're essentially using make-use tables to create the link. Certain industries produce certain things, but they use other things. So that's the linkage between commodity and industry. Then we're using those industry employment forecasts at the county level to grow our commodity flows. So as you can see, a lot of work has been done. A lot more is underway, and we're still on track for a completion in June of next year of 2025. So that's the first item. The second one is the Freight Concept Development Program. So we're about to get started on the fiscal year 2025 Freight Concept Development Program studies. And this is a very significant effort. It's quite large. It's a 4-part effort. We're going to do 2 concept development studies. One is for the Southern Middlesex County North-South Truck Corridor Project, and this is in Cranberry and Monroe in Middlesex County. And you see the cover on the right. That's the Southern Middlesex County Freight Movement Study. That's where the original recommendation came from that gave us the idea for this upcoming project. The second concept development study is the East Hanover Avenue Bridge Catenary Rail Clearance Project in Morris Plains and Morris Township in Morris County. The other report cover on the bottom right is the Morris-Warren County Rail Corridor Study completed back in 2013. And this is the study that originally identified this constraint to the Plate F rail cars at that location. We're also going to do a couple more things as part of this. We're going to conduct a preliminary screening for Plate F vertical clearance through Perth Amboy on the New Jersey Transit North Jersey coastline. Plate F, really quickly, it's a geometric standard for rail cars. It's a national industry standard, and you need 17-foot clearance from top of rail to top of rail car. looking at the catenary area, electrified territory in this case, you need a significant buffer above that 70. So we're going to be looking at that and seeing what the potential options are and whether this should go into a concept development study in the future. And finally, we're going to have just kind of a general freight concept development program support. And this is going to help us do two things: identify the projects that we want to consider for the next round of this program, but also help the subregions advance previously completed concept development studies. So this is the third full round of this program. So there's a number of studies that have been completed, and we will assist the subregions as they request to provide that kind of support to advance some of those previously completed studies. So RFP was issued back in June. We received proposals in August, and consultant selection is underway. And hopefully we'll be actually up and running in the next couple of months. So that concludes my report. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Jacob. All right, so we're going to move on to our presentations now. Our first presenter is Nicholas Responti, Senior Director of Sales and Port Initiatives at Zeem Solutions. Did I get that right, Zeem? Okay. Nicholas spearheads business development and port electrification efforts, fostering Zeem strategic partnerships and managing key customer relationships. Before joining Zeem, Nicholas held positions at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, involving government affairs, community engagement, business development, and goods movement management. His career began as a legislative director for a New Jersey state senator, and he holds a bachelor's degree in history and law from Montclair State University and a master's degree in international relations and diplomacy from Seton Hall University. So Nick, the floor is yours, and then we'll take questions of Nick when he's done with his presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Get started here. Okay, so thank you for the introduction. As you can tell, New Jersey guy through and through. Good to be back here. See some familiar faces. I've attended many Freight Initiatives Committee meetings in my time with the Port Authority. So as was mentioned, before coming to Zeem, I spent a while at the Port Authority, almost 7.5 years. Really loved my job there. This opportunity at Zeem came up about a little over 3 years ago. I've been at Zeem now, and it was a good intersection of, both my transportation and policy experience as well as industry experience, and then, really my personal desire to do more and better for the environment. So I'm going to walk you through some slides, pretty brief, but we'll go over an overview of the business model, get into some of our existing operations out in California, and then we're going to go through our growth plans, talk about an exciting project we're going to do here in Newark pretty soon. And then also our focus on ports, which, as you can tell from my background and now my title at Zeem, is very important to me. It's near and dear to my heart. When I started here, at a small company, we continue to grow. I probably wore several hats, came on first doing policy and government affairs, and similar to my path at the Port Authority, moved into more of a business development role. And now I am focused on as mentioned, sales and port initiatives. As you'll see, a lot of our depots are tied to where ports are located. All right, so who is Zeem? In the most basic sense, we design, build, and operate charging depots for commercial fleet operators. Where are we putting these types of depots? We're putting them either in or near major transportation centers and assets like seaports, airports, warehousing and distribution centers, as well as on customer properties. I'll get into a little bit more detail in the following slides about how we do and deploy the business model. Our mission is very simple. We want to accelerate the transition to electric transportation or zero emission mobility for all types of fleet operators, all sizes, class 1 through 8 across the country. And our goal in doing that is always to try and get to cost parity with diesel operations. When you're talking about zero emission transportation, you're going to hear TCO, that acronym a lot, total cost of ownership or total cost of operation parity. Admittedly, it's challenging to do without government incentives and support. However, some use cases and vehicle classes are already getting pretty close. And when you really do it on an analytical or supply chain origin to destination standpoint, you can show fleet operators, really how it could be done and managed appropriately when utilizing, Zeem or others as your partner in this space. This bullet here talking about charging infrastructure, it all starts with the infrastructure, right? You have to get the infrastructure in the ground. Some also very challenging to do, working with, utilities and getting your interconnect on the make-ready side. But, like I said before, we focus on all fleets, class 1 through 8 in size, and a good way to understand the vehicle and customer composition at all of our depots. It's really representative of the market that you're in. So in further slides, I'll get into our existing operations in Inglewood, California, just outside of LAX. But if you were to go there today, you're going to see a lot of rental and ride share, passenger shuttling, as well as some Class 8 trucks doing air cargo. Now flash forward to some of our port depots, which I'll talk about. They're going to be, 90 to 95, maybe even 100% Class 8 drayage operations. And then this last bullet here about impact, we've been doing this. Zeem has been a company in this space now for almost 8 years, which is a long time for this type of industry, and really started out as essentially a call center with our sales team, doing outbound calls to fleets across the country. So you're going to hear me say fleet focused several times throughout this. We gathered a lot of key intel during that outreach that we continue to do today, but not only did it help understand the pain points and the barriers to make the transition to electric mobility, it helped us craft the business model to what it is today, and we still use it on a regular basis more for customer retention, acquisition, lead generation, and also importantly for our site selection and assessment process as we expand across the U.S. All right, so 3 types of depot offerings. The first one you see here is a shared charging depot. This is the primary business model. This is a multi-tenant depot operation where we provide our infrastructure and our services to all types of fleet operators where we put these depots, right? So I'll get into more detail on that after. You take the second primary offering here, it's called a co-located charging depot, where we go on to customer sites, put in the infrastructure, and then include third-party fleet operators that are near that site to revenue share and build the revenue as a collective together with the customer. And then this third one is more of an in-yard infrastructure where, say, you go to a big fleet operator, you put in the charging just for their fleet, and then you help them make that transition by infrastructure and operations. All right, so now a little bit more detail on exactly what we do at these depots. So this is a real, every picture you see in this slide deck, I'll just say these are real, they're not staged. This is at our one operational site that we have right now. As you can tell, these are Class 8 electric drayage trucks. Now, some of these are doing air cargo, but some are also doing port moves. Now, this customer will eventually pivot to our Long Beach, California depot. This location just happens to work for their duty cycle right now. This Inglewood depot, like I said, is not a typical drayage site. So what do we provide at these depots? First and foremost, it's charging. We sell electrons. Think of it as a gas station, right? We sell electrons on a per kilowatt hour basis to customers. So you can just be a Zeem customer with a contract charging agreement. And then a second offering is really, you start to add on additional services, more traditional truck depot services like overnight secure parking and storage, vehicle service and maintenance, washes. We have lounge space for drivers. And then the third really comprehensive package is Zeem will go out and procure, source, or purchase the vehicles for the fleet operator and then lease them back out for a period of 3, 5, or 7 years. This isn't a rental service. Think long-term leases. And in any case we're doing that, we are aggregating any incentive that's available in that given market. So there's incentives on the vehicle side as well as the infrastructure side. So we always look to do that to, again, get to that objective of cost parity with your diesel operation. Another critical component of our depots is 24/7, 365 operational staff. They're there 100% of the time. So literally the fleet operator, all they have to do is focus on what they do best, moving goods, people, and services, while our depot coordinators really handle all the rest. So think about, you drive to the depot in your personal vehicle, you park it, you get greeted by a depot coordinator. Your vehicle is ready to go for the day. It's all charged up. Do a quick vehicle diagnostic, state of charge, quick inspection. You run your duty cycle and you bring it back at the end of the day. That's a very simple description of what we do, but a fleet operator never has to touch a charger. They just focus on, again, moving goods, people, and services and running their duty cycle while we handle all the challenging aspects of not only making the transition up front, but also on the daily operations. All right, now this is my favorite subject here, port gateways and short-haul distribution. Ports are incredibly important to Zeem for many reasons, but I'll just highlight a few here. So it's as many in this room know, ports are an intersection of all types of transportation. So in this larger transition to a clean energy economy, it really is critical not only to focus on dray operators, but when you're looking at ports, there's many other modes of transportation that could start to electrify or get cleaner or really just decarbonize. So we are working with all those stakeholders, not just the fleet operators, at major ports throughout the country to make this happen. It is also a unique intersection of public and private sectors. A lot of port authorities are represented or owned by government agencies, whether city, state, federal, or in the case of the Port Authority, unique by state agency. So it's helpful there, again, on a partnership perspective. You bring in the private sector stakeholders to collaborate with public and, accomplish mutual decarbonization or electrification objectives. And this third bullet here, regulatory compliance and sustainability goals. This is very important. On the regulatory compliance side, you're going to hear about, California is obviously leading the charge here, no pun intended, on electrification, on a policy and political landscape that is very favorable to electrification, right? But if you go back, in time, actually the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey took the initiative to launch the Clean Air Strategy, and then LA and Long Beach did the Clean Air Action Plan, and some other ports also have clean air strategies. But, it's not just trucks. It just happens to be the trucks that are the most prominent in terms of the eyes of the public that are important in the transition. But obviously that is Zeem's focus. This is a picture here of, it's not GCT Bayonne anymore, Stefan, it's Port Liberty Bayonne, right? But yeah, that was a truck we were demoing here. We didn't have a depot yet in New Jersey when we were making those runs, but we were demoing that with several customers, and that's doing a container pull out of Port Liberty Bayonne. This fourth bullet here, location. That is critical, right? So all of the depots, as I mentioned before, for our port sites are going to be either in or near ports. In order to do this appropriately, you have to be near the origins and the destination. So I highlight short haul distribution up top. That is very important. Let's be realistic. With electric trucks, the range and the capability yet should not be used for long haul at this stage. Maybe when more infrastructure is available along those routes or the technology continues to improve. But with the products that are available now, you can do 90 or more % of the moves in that short haul distribution market. Call it less than 300-mile radius around port gateways. So, for example, the Port of New York and New Jersey is a good candidate for electrification because, as many of you may know in this room, 80 to 85% of the cargo stays fairly close to the port, right? There's a high concentration of customers here, and you can make a lot of moves going from marine terminal to container yard, marine terminal, warehouse, and distribution center, and back. But that's how you get closer to that cost parity I mentioned earlier, right? You get that high asset utilization, you can get much closer to cost parity. And then this last bullet, fleet operator focus. Everything we do is for the fleets, right? We understand how challenging it is. We're not mandating anything. It's the governmental entities that are doing it. We're really just the conduit to electric mobility for these fleet operators. And then this second part here about commercial traction. It's working with the others in the industry, not just those that are moving the cargo, but those that own the cargo or facilitate the movement of the cargo. So your beneficial cargo owners, your large shippers or your small shippers that perhaps they have sustainability or decarbonization objectives to hit X percentage of carbon reduction in their supply chain by this time frame. We go out and say, hey, we have these fleet partners. Let Zeem be your partner to do that with these depots and our fleet operators, or we can help your trucker make that transition to electric mobility. All right, so this is our fully operational site right now. It is all the way across the country. Really excited to get operations started in New Jersey, so I don't have to fly to California as much anymore. But we've been doing really good stuff. So operational for almost 3 years now, December 2021. It was just semi-operational at this site because we were caught up in some of the COVID supply chain challenges with switchgear. But you can see this first bullet up top. That's the activity we did with just 6 dual-port DCFC chargers at this site. Flash forward to 2024, year to date. You can jump to the bottom and just notice those numbers. They speak for themselves. 3.6 million kilowatt hours of energy dispensed this year alone, fueling over 98,000 charging sessions and 1 million kilogram of CO2 saved. So that's equivalent to about 270 homes being heated on an annual basis. Not our equivalencies. These are based off of EPA numbers. And then just some of the key bullets about the site. A little over 3 acres. We have 78 dual-port DCFC chargers. These are the ABB Terra 180s. That's 180 kilowatt chargers, dual-port. And at that time, believe it or not, that was the best on the market. You'll learn about our next few sites that already, we're looking at much high-powered chargers. It's all about throughput and capacity, and that's how you get it. Another key point here is the 7.5 megawatt utility interconnection. In this industry, when you're looking for sites, utility engagement is critical. Sometimes you get lucky. In this case, we were very fortunate that the power was available in the grid, and then you have to get the time and the gear, which is called the make-ready infrastructure, to bring that power from the grid to your site. And that's what took that time period for us, but we're fully operational there. And as you'll notice on this next slide, we have a lot going on in terms of expansion. But one thing's pretty obvious when you look at this map. Very rapid growth, so we're very busy here at Zeem, but where are all these sites located? Again, near major ports. You can see several sites in California, again, just the gold standard on policy and incentives and subsidies for our industry, but other states have made a lot of progress. New Jersey is one of them, New York, Colorado's another interesting state on the incentive side, Washington State. But focusing here on New Jersey, we do have a point-of-sale voucher program. I will not take any spotlight away from Peg at NJDEP when she goes up, but they've been very active in this space. So excited to hear about what Peg has to talk about when she goes up. But it's critical to our business, the incentive landscape, but it's not the only factor, right? So it's driven by commercial traction and the policy and political landscape. So if we can go to one of these markets and get an anchor customer at these sites, we do it. And for example, a good way to understand that is take our site outside the Port of Savannah. It's going to be much smaller than the site we're going to build in Long Beach or outside of the Port of New York, New Jersey here. So it's all about being pragmatic and scalable when you do these kinds of projects. But let's talk about our backyard here. You see highlighted in yellow. The Newark Depot, it'll be opening at the end of next year. And here's a little bit more information about that site. So it's at the former Essex Generating Station, just north of Doremus Ave, really where the Doremus Ave overweight corridor meets 1 and 9, 70 and 995, at an intersection of all those major highways. It is located really up in the heart of, the industrial section there. A lot of rail, intermodal activity, warehousing and distribution, container yards, chassis depot. So again, emphasizing location. It's going to be very accessible for fleet operators, not only getting to and from, the main Port of New York and New Jersey complex in Newark, Elizabeth, and just over the Bay Bridge into Bayonne and Jersey City, but also nearby where they're, either discharging or picking up chassis or discharging or picking up containers at, container yards or warehousing and distribution. So this site, for example, will be, a mega site. It's going to have 84 DCFC charge ports, and the chargers there will be the ABB A400. So you can see from the 180s in Inglewood at our first site, we continue to grow and learn on a daily basis. This product is the highest powered on the market. That's widely available. You'll hear about megawatt chargers. That's future plans. But dual port, so you can dispense 200 kilowatts per port. So say if you come in with a Volvo VNRE at a 20% state of charge, it's a 535 or 585 kilowatt hour battery pack. You put it on one of those chargers, you can get it back up to 80% in about 2 to 3 hours, so 2.5 hours of a charge, that would be opportunity charging, or, overnight is a different story in the return to base model. But this site will be able to accommodate approximately 500 Class 8 electric trucks. That's just Class 8. Looking at the location, that'll be the primary use case, but we'll also have last mile delivery. I'm sure there'll be rental and ride share, utilizing airport operations too. It really is a key location, but just breaking down those numbers on a Class 8 basis with the larger battery packs. And how we're able to do that is obviously the power capacity at the site is going to be a 30 megawatt interconnect, and plenty of room for growth there. We don't need 30 megawatts right off the bat. Again, got very fortunate with the utility makeup at this site, but that our operational staff and the power of those chargers can really increase our throughput and capacity, and that's what it's all about. It's all about keeping turns, and when you can get that high asset utilization, we can provide an affordable service to our customers. That's it for me. Thank you very much. I look forward to any questions now, or hang out afterward as well.
Yeah, questions for Nick?
Yeah, I have a question about, it's got to do with chargers. Now, if you have a truck that's been charged at your depots and is out on the road and maybe is mistakenly gone beyond its range, can it be charged at a DC fast charger that's for private vehicles, or does a truck need specific charging?
Okay, so really good question. It can be charged as long as it's utilizing the same charger standard, right? So as long as it's typically the CCS1 is the most widely used in the industry, especially for commercial. You may hear or read about NAS. That's the Tesla system. That's more for light duty, and a lot of the other OEMs, the light duty OEMs are utilizing that too because they have a large network of chargers available, and that's a key barrier. But to your question, yeah, you could. We've charged these things at the Jersey Gardens Mall when we're running demos at the Electrify America site. So you can, and sometimes there is a little bit of a learning curve there, even with the technology and software. It's called a handshake. So sometimes you have to run some troubleshooting. That's one of the benefits of having a dedicated depot like we do. Like, you never have to worry about anything like that. But mostly to answer your question, yes, it could be charged outside. And then, a lot of really exciting technologies also available. There's mobile power solutions that are out there that say if you needed to, bring that out to a customer site or pick up a stranded asset, you can do it with a mobile power solution.
Does your depot offer that as an option?
Yeah, so that's an additional service. You can add that where, we can come and recover your vehicle, but we'll typically do that regardless of a cost for customers because it's so nascent. We don't want, it's important to be flexible. And, earlier I mentioned all the services we provide. You can pick and choose you can just charge with Zeem. That's deliberate, right? You can add your service and maintenance because, we know how challenging it is to make that transition.
Any other questions for Nick? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yep. Next, we will hear from Pip Decker, co-founder and chief executive officer at Current Trucking. Prior to Current Trucking, Pip co-founded and launched BMR Energy, an independent power producer based in the Caribbean and Latin America. Before BMR, Pip founded and owned U.S.-based solar developer SunEast, which became one of the leading developers of solar projects on the East Coast. His previous roles also include efforts with Brookfield Power and Noble Environmental Power. Pip has a bachelor's degree in public policy from the College of William & Mary and a Class A commercial driver's license. His family runs Blue Star Farm, an organic-based vegetable farm located in Stuyvesant, New York. Pip, the floor is yours.
Chairman Shaw, thank you very much for hosting us today. Nick, I give you a lot of credit and congrats on all the work. My name is Pip Decker, and as I was introduced, I've spent nearly 17 years developing wind and solar projects prior to founding Current. I always like to say I have a Class A because I can help explain, drive, and parallel park a semi-truck. And I did it down at 202 in Union, the driving academy. I got a hat to prove it. Today, just talk a little bit high level about policy initiatives that we saw in the wind and solar space. Maybe there are some lessons here as the freight planning team and the commission thinks about their future too. Our goal really is to be a steering wheel to help every operator and planning agency and utility service provider think about the whole package of what it's going to take to get this off the ground. So Current can support Class 8 down to Class 2 electrification initiatives. We own vehicles that we lease out to operators, and we'll get to a project we're talking about here in Newark shortly. But I've spent time developing here and abroad. Partner Dan and I, we put up some electrical firsts. We did the first large utility scale wind farms in upstate New York 20 years ago. I developed the largest wind farm in Jamaica, which has been operating for 10 years, safely with no lost time incidents. And so we take this stuff very seriously. And we think zero emission freight is that next future. Folks like Zeem and others are really kind of pushing that envelope safely. And we're excited to say that we're riding alongside them on this adventure. I was a little nervous this weekend about the Yankees, but we build, land, and expand, and the way to get all the way to the pennant is singles and doubles. So you put runners on base, you're always in scoring position. As Chairman Shaw knows, we're rooting for our Del Barton alumni to take it through here and get the pennant. But when you look at how successful projects were done on a solar basis here in New Jersey, which became a leader, they did it in a small way that was really built out the comfort of the space to say this is possible, this is scalable, and how did they do that? So some of the projects we're going to talk about that we've done take that similar approach: build, land, expand, singles and doubles. Go Yankees. This is the first port electrification project in Virginia. These were 4-yard trucks that we put in service in 90 days from when we were awarded a contract. Our job was to bring these vehicles during COVID from Germany into the port, build a charging station before Christmas, which we safely did. This project's been operating for over several years. And our team members were based here in Morris County. We're responsible for training unit operators locally, supplying the interconnect with Dominion Energy, and sourcing Buy America Act materials to safely deploy what is a skid mount solution in Norfolk. Great part about charging and some of this electrification story is that the projects that have been built in America from wind and solar plants that are operating today are in the United States. Charging stations that we are developing come from the US. These are Buy America Act compliant charging stations that are built in West Virginia. We put them on a skid for APM terminals, and we delivered it on a Class 8 electric semi into the Port of Newark last year and energized it in 2 days. We were pretty excited about that. We safely did it. And the great thing about this is that we can charge our stations. You can see the blue and the green lights up top ahead of time. So we're called pre-commissioned. So when we show up to a job site, we're ready to go. And that is something that we're really proud of. I've spent time just interconnecting tough projects all over. And some of our special sauce is trying to work safely, but also navigate maritime environments, navigate freight environments, because we understand how difficult and complex day-to-day logistics is. And we're doing that in other locations, but right here in Newark. So this project is called IMF. They have 100 operating Class 8 semis. They're going to be one of the largest leaders in EV, and we're lucky to be a charging partner with them. And this is going to be an impactful project that ultimately we'll see over 20 electric semis. That'll be a mix of yard trucks and Cascadias that will be in and about in the Newark area. So folks at the NJTPA, your projects and policies that you're working on translate into real opportunity on the ground. And I can tell you, the operator experience in driving in the Cascadia is great. And when I learned how to double clutch, get my permit, and then you go into electric semi, it just is a different experience. It's a different. Happy to take questions on the technology, where it's moving, but I just love talking about projects we can point to. This is an overview of where this location is. This is right in the Port of Newark, and our goal is to put it in safely, smoothly, and using Buy America Act compliant equipment that is similarly on a skid, while also looking at future expansion. Current provides that full surf offering. We think about vehicles that we can put into service across any location and provide charging, green fuel maintenance, any kind of offering. This is called a trucks as a service model. And the idea of trucks as a service is to have the little guy stay in the game. It's very difficult for a drayage operator to call up PSE&G and say, I'm in. And we hear that. How are you going to do it? Trucks as a service is a way to say, look, we'll write a grant for you. We'll lease you the vehicle. We'll find you a charging. This is stuff that Nick and their team do every day. It's a labor of love, but once it gets going, the positive feedback loop is there. So trucks as a service trucks as a service, charging as a service. These are things you're going to hear about in the future. But we also try to do other projects. And I know freight is important, but along the road are others. So this is the first electric bus we put in service in Denver. These are Proterra buses. You see Proterra buses at Newark Airport. We were really proud to put this in service. We did this in 6 weeks from when we got our contract to support APM. And Current is backed by Aries Management. We're excited to have a partner, Ring. And there's a lot of capital that's coming in to support these initiatives. But the big one for us really rests in kind of our team, thinking through what these projects mean to us and how impactful they can be, because the environmental offset is significant. And when I look at the projects I've done on the wind and solar side, the project in Jamaica provided 3% of peak power. We offset 500,000 barrels of oil being burned every year in that country. And when you think about port and maritime environments, the impact on Class 8 is so crucial to enhancing air quality initiatives, which I think may do well because it needs no introduction here, but I appreciate the work that DEP is doing really to accelerate this initiative. We have projects to point to, and we hope to do many more.
All right, thank you, Pip. Any questions? I see one in the back here.
Yeah, I think the good news on zero emissions is that it can come in any form. So I've spent 20 years putting electricity on the grid, and now we're taking electricity off the grid. Fuel cells are something that Current doesn't do, but we know folks at Toyota, Peterbilt, and others, they have their own hydrogen and fuel cell initiatives. My partner Dan put the first fuel cell energy project in Middlesex, Connecticut at a hospital. But over the road, it's an option. It's something that I think it's best left for others. We support it. Whenever people say is it and or, this is an and story. And so to the extent that the committee is interested in learning more about that, I'm happy to bring in folks that we know that deploy that kind of.
Thank you. Yes.
What is the launch time on that?
Sure. Everyone always wants it to be faster, but there's different. So today, that Freightliner eCascadia has a kilowatt hour rating. So you always think about how many batteries are in there. What's my kilowatt hour rating? 565 kilowatt hour rating battery pack. When you think about speed of charge, we have charging stations that can do 180 to 360 kilowatt hours per hour. So comfortably, you're talking 2 hours if you're running out to Pennsylvania and back. But it can be longer. We always think about how fast do you need it and what's it going to cost. And so you can get better pricing if operators here at IMF, they park their vehicles at night and they have 10 hours until their next team member comes in the cab. So it can be done in longer increments, but the fastest we're seeing is 2 hours. MCS is going to be a 30-minute top up, but that also comes with more demand and higher utilization efforts with utilities.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Pip? Yes, Jacob.
Really quick. So the charging infrastructure that you were talking about, it meets the Buy America. What about the truck?
So the trucks have different standards that are out there. There's BABA is the other one. Some of the trucks do have Buy America Act compliance, some don't. Obviously, if you're applying for funding on the truck side, you have to have that requisite requirement. So we're seeing on the yard truck side, Buy America or BABA compliance coming. But some of the onshoring of manufacturing is starting to happen today. So Accelera, if anyone's doing research on that, that's a combination between Kenworth, Daimler, Peterbilt on American-made batteries down in the south. So we're starting to see a lot of capacity of batteries coming online in the next 2 years, which will lead to lower prices, but also compliance. You can rent, yeah, you can. Yeah, so you can absolutely retrofit vehicles. That is something that's been happening a lot in the school bus space. So wonderful programs out of NYSERDA have promoted that, where they're almost free buses when you talk about retrofit. A lot of OEMs are bringing out newer vehicles, but the retrofit options do exist. And we see that also in transit.
All right. Any other questions for Pip? Nope. All right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, you were referring to Anthony Volpe from,
That's
we're
right.
both Morris County guys here, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Last but not least, our final presenter is Peg Hanna, Director of the Division of Climate Change Mitigation and Monitoring at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. She develops and oversees economy-wide decarbonization initiatives, advances clean and renewable energy strategies, and oversees operation of the state's ambient air monitoring network. She's been with the NJDEP for 33 years. The first 15 years of her DEP tenure were spent in NJDEP's compliance and enforcement program, developing policies and regulations for stationary sources. She has a BS in biology from the University of Scranton. Peg, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here. It's been a while since I've been here. Let me tell you a quick story anecdote about how this grant came to be. So I was at a large conference. There were about 30 states gathered in Austin, Texas, about a year ago. And we were brainstorming ideas for this new round of federal funding that had come out called the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Implementation Grant. And I was sitting at a round table with the topic of transportation. The other tables were buildings and other types of decarbonization. And someone proposed this idea of submitting a grant application, multi-state grant application to do truck charging across a couple corridors. I thought it was a great idea. So then they said, okay, well, who wants to lead the coalition? Because a state entity has to lead the coalition. It can't be a private entity. And I thought the idea was too good to just let it pass. So I kind of went like this. You know how you're like, well, maybe I'll think about it. I was like, oh, maybe I'll think about it. Bam. I submitted the grant application. So the moral of that story is, unless you're really sure that you want to do something, don't go like this. You either go like this or you keep your hands down. So obviously it had a good outcome, and I am glad that I did my halfway hand raise. This was a really competitive national competition. It was $4.3 billion that was available. There were over 300 applications submitted at the end of the day. Of those 300 applications, only 25 were selected. And those 25 were comprised of 13 states, 11 municipalities, and a tribe. You can see in green that designates the coalition application. So that means more than one party went ahead and submitted the application. So we were thrilled when we learned that we were awarded to almost $250 million as part of this grant. So we got every penny that we had asked for. The coalition was led by me at New Jersey DEP, and we partnered with 3 other states, Maryland, Connecticut, and Delaware. What was really unique to me was the partnerships with Maryland Department of Transportation and Delaware Department of Transportation. That was the first time as an environmental agency that we had partnered with a transportation agency from another state. So it was very eye-opening to hear the insights and lessons learned from those DOTs of the world. The proposal was not just developed by me. There was obviously a lot of people in the room. Georgetown Climate Center was particularly instrumental in helping us get this done. You can see the tons reductions projected as part of this application. You might ask, why did we pick these particular states, Maryland, Delaware, and Connecticut, when there are certainly, many others that are deserving of having charging stations run through their states? The first reason, I think, is because they also kind of halfway raised their hand and said, we're interested in doing this with you. The other reason, though, and I think this is maybe a more compelling reason, and it is that all of these states have been working a long time on reducing emissions from transportation. So many of them have complementary rules, policies, or incentive programs that have kickstarted the industry. Years ago, it was reducing diesel emissions and reducing particulate matter and NOx. Now it's electrifying to mitigate climate change. And all of these states have been working collaboratively together for decades to get that done. So we thought that that would make for a stronger and more robust application. So this is what the project map looks like. So the idea here is that we need a comprehensive interstate charging corridor. So in the short term, we believe it will be used primarily by local delivery trucks because that's what's most prevalent right now in the electric trucking market. But as the industry builds out and as more class 7 and 8 electric trucks become available, we would anticipate that these chargers would be used by those regional long-haul trucks. So this corridor that was designated as primarily I-95, but as you can see for this area here, North Jersey, there are what we called as part of the application feeder roads or tributaries. So these are the roads that are feeding into 95 or feeding into the port, potentially going across to New York. And we thought it was important to include them as potential locations for publicly accessible truck charging depots. The other reason we chose these corridors, the federal government not too long ago released a national zero emission freight corridor strategy, and they had phases in that strategy. This whole area was designated as a phase 1 priority for electrifying the freight network throughout the country. The other interesting thing about this corridor is we obviously had to put a particular emphasis on environmental justice communities. When you get federal funding, you have to comply with Justice 40, which means 40% of the benefits of the project have to flow towards environmental justice communities. On this corridor, there are 1.7 million people that live near the corridor, and 30% of those residents are in low-income or disadvantaged communities. In New Jersey specifically, there are 134 communities that live within 100 meters of the particular corridor. So what are we going to use the money for? By far, the majority of the money is going towards the actual charging. So of the 250 million, 227 million will be used to build out truck charging infrastructure sites. There will also be some money dedicated towards technical assistance for the site hosts once the projects are awarded. Workforce training was a required component of the application, and I will admit, as will the other states, that this is where we are the weakest. We think it's one of the most important pieces of our application, but we are not workforce development experts. So we're going to rely heavily on our New Jersey Department of Labor and our Economic Development Authority to help us with this piece of it. Community engagement, and that doesn't just mean LIDAC communities, that means any stakeholder that has an interest in this will be solicited to provide input for the selection of the sites. And then obviously there's going to be a lot of planning and coordination. Les, do you think I'm going to do this all myself? I am not. We are hiring a third-party program administrator to be determined. We'll hopefully have that person on board within the next couple months, and they will oversee the entire project for all of the states, with particularly helping me as we move forward with this over the next 5 years. So there's a lot of words on this page, but essentially the third-party program administrator will have 2 main roles. On the left, they will provide administrative support to all of this, convening meetings, managing all the paperwork, et cetera. The middle column is the most important. They are going to help us draft requests for information, to help us identify what we don't know or what we think we know, but we got wrong. That request for information will then all be collated and will develop specifications and technical standards for the request for proposal, which will then go out to pick the site hosts throughout the states. That person will also help with developing model curricula for workforce training and will help with the community engagement. On the far right, we are expecting the third-party program administrator to subcontract out this regional policy support and facilitation, likely to an organization like Georgetown Climate Center or the Northeast States for Coordinated Air Use Management. So that's overall what that person is anticipated to be doing. So this is what the breakdown of charging depots will look like per state. The allocation of funding was based on the amount of particulate matter emissions on or near the corridors that we selected. So New Jersey had the highest particulate matter concentration, highest emissions of particulate matter, not concentrations, highest projected emissions near the corridor. So we will have 9 charging depots in our state. Oops. And this is the further breakdown. So throughout the region, there will be 24. With R9, we are expecting that to cost about 84 million. And in total, we expect about 450 charging plugs at 24 sites when all is said and done, for a total of about $227 million invested in the actual charging infrastructure. The timeline. So here's a surprise. EPA is actually ahead of schedule. They executed the grant agreement with us on Friday. We had expected it in January. So we are now 3 months ahead of schedule, which is good news and bad news. We weren't quite ready to start spending money, but that's good news that we do have access to the money now, and we can start drawing down. What we are doing right now is forming committees amongst the states, and we are working on identifying where our gaps in knowledge are so that we could ensure that the way we proceed is actually keeping up with the latest knowledge, the latest technical standards. For example, there are 2 U.S. Department of Energy funded studies going on right now with active participation from utilities and fleets. New Jersey is privileged to be both of those corridor studies. One study goes from New Jersey north, the other study goes from New Jersey south. Both of those studies are looking at ideal sites for charging infrastructure throughout the region. And one of the things they're taking into account is grid supply and grid power. So as Nick and Pip mentioned, these charging depots require huge amounts of power. So to the extent that we can identify sites that have a little power already or that can easily get more power, that's where we will prioritize. We are also hoping to work closely with the West Coast Coalition that was awarded a very similar type of grant. It's led by Caltrans, which is California Department of Transportation. So working to engage them as well in the months leading up to our formal kickoff in January. So the first half of next year, we anticipate issuing a request for information. As I said, that's to get information from fleets, stakeholders, utilities, EV charging station providers, so that we can then develop a request for proposal that's robust and meets the needs. We will then sort of take a step back, do a mid-course correction, review lessons learned, and issue a second round of RFPs for the remainder of the sites in 2027. So the entire project is expected to span approximately 5 years, knock on wood. I think if there is to be a delay or a slowdown, it will be in getting the utilities to provide sufficient power. So that's where we are right now. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Peggy. I'm going to start with one question.
Okay.
So a lot of it, you're looking at research and such, but we heard from 2 folks here, Zeem and Current. With the private, how would the private sector be involved? Because they've obviously been working in this space. They've got a lot of knowledge.
Right.
How do you incorporate that? And then who operates these stations once they're built?
The stations would be privately owned and operated. The states, New Jersey DEP and Delaware and Maryland, have no interest in actually owning and operating the sites. So they would be operated by a third party site host property owner. In terms of building on Zeem and Nick and Pip's experience, in my opinion, based on the national conversation, I think the jury is still out in terms of how much charging will be needed at public locations versus at the depot, the private locations. I think it's obviously going to be a combination, but I've heard numbers that range from 70 to 80% private depot charging to 70 to 80% public charging. So I think it's really too soon to tell how many models will use the IMF model where the charging is on site versus a model more like Zeem where it's access to many fleets in one location, more of a quasi-public type of setting.
All right. Any other questions for Peg?
When a trucker is trying to charge, is there a reservation?
Oh, is there like a reservation system, or how do you see it happening? I mean, do they get charged, leave, come back? I mean, how does that work?
I don't know. Nick, what do you do? Do you have a reservation system? in Lex for your,
Yeah, we do, so it's based on your typical duty cycle when you come in charge, but most of the time it's to return the base overnight charging, but when you are going to opportunity charge, which is known as in the industry, you will do that appointment reservation.
you will do reservation, okay. So I guess it'll depend on who the site host is and how they want to operate.
Do they consider the truck parking, or do they consider it strictly, you know, trucks have to park, right, for hours of service? So do they consider that part of their truck parking, and then they could,
Oh, can they count it as their rest hour?
and
I
they,
don't know.
I believe they can. I typically don't even need a microphone. I believe they can because you're technically stopped, or at least with our model, you would get out of the truck and hang out in the lounge. So I don't see why that could not be counted for the ELD mandates.
I don't know, I have to ask DOT.
Because, yeah, for us, it's like charging and storage is an option too. So if you have to store overnight, that's an option. But for an opportunity-based charging, that's what the lounge access is for. You can go hang out in there, get a coffee, internet, 2 hours or more. And I don't see why that would be any different than going to a rest stop and getting out of the vehicle and taking a load off.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would defer to US DOT on that. I don't know how they enforce those.
All right, over here, Sussex County here.
I was just wondering, how difficult is it going to be for the utility companies to dial up the amount of power they generate to accommodate this?
Very, very difficult, for sure.
That's
Yeah,
a
I mean,
huge variable.
I don't think there's anybody with rose-colored glasses on, when it comes to that question. Requires a tremendous amount of power between the truck electrification, building electrification, and the data centers that are coming online. The amount of power needed is incredible. And in New Jersey, our governor's administration's goal is for our energy to primarily come from renewable sources. So not only do we need more energy, but we need more of it to come from solar and wind.
Does perhaps nuclear factor into the
Nuclear could
future
play a role.
equation?
Yeah, I heard they're starting up 3 Mile Island again, which has been
Yeah.
mothballed for years, in order to provide enough supply to Microsoft's data centers. So yeah, I think nuclear could potentially play a role as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Peg?
Oh, thanks. So just in terms of site selection or site identification, I guess that would be something that one of the consultants would be doing. And is there, there may be existing locations where there's truck parking or fueling, but to the extent there may be new locations, you're going to have land use issues. So is there, for the municipalities and the counties who maybe are on those corridors, is there, what would you recommend in terms of outreach to communities and land use discussions? Wait, start now? What would you think?
You mean in terms of the communities coming to?
In terms of understanding where there might be zoning, where it's permitted, where it's not permitted. I mean, you're talking about like lounge space, which is now that's a retail, some sort of retail use or something else. I don't even know how you would classify that exactly, but that might be an issue. So we need to think through that land use component.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too early for the communities to start thinking about that. I think once we issue the request for proposals with the site selection criteria in it, that's when the communities might want to perk up their ears and say, okay, New Jersey DEP just said one of the priorities for site selection is it has to be in Warren County. Okay, so that's time now for Warren County to wake up and pay attention. I don't think that's what we're going to say, but you know what I mean? So I think until we identify what the criteria are, it's a little bit hard to have a, granular conversation on that.
All right, got another question back here.
So I just wanted to clarify, so do you imagine that the DEP or the government will build these sites and then a private company will lease it and operate it? Or
Everything will be done by a private company.
Oh, so,
We
okay,
are not interested in owning and operating charging.
okay, so,
So the RFP will be for a private landowner or site host
okay, and
to develop the site.
the money will go to help build it, or or subsidize it?
The money will go, right,
Okay.
yep,
fair.
exactly.
All right.
Wednesday at 11 o'clock at the Vince Lombardi Truck Stop will be a press event to announce that we actually have the money in our hands. If anybody's interested in attending, you are all welcome to come. And there will be a Lightning E-Cascadia there from Herman Trucking.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Nick,
This grant is just for the charging stations, not for
Okay.
the vehicles.
Okay, thank you. So when these are, so for example, these questions, like I'm sure Pip as well, when these RFPs come out, all kinds of companies are going to be looking and going right after these things, right? Like that's typically what we do. These are opportunities for private companies like ourselves to competitively go after these public bids and then deploy them with our business models.
Yeah.
Of course. So it depends on the utility territory. Pitt mentioned a little bit of this, off-peak, on-peak, but say on approximation, 45 cents a kilowatt hour. This is SCE, off-peak charge. I just gave my competitor some proprietary information. No, but that varies. That varies, yeah.
It depends on how much money you want to make off of it.
Yeah.
So some installations like local government are installing them and there's no fee for anybody to use them. They're just recovering the cost of the energy and they're taking it off from somewhere else. Other companies want to make a profit on them, so they'll add a surcharge to generate an additional revenue stream for their company. I think that's what New Jersey DOT is planning to do with their NEVI. There'll be a surcharge so that the revenue stream comes back to New Jersey DOT. But it's up to the site host.
all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of our presenters.